All right. 7 o'clock, so we'll call to order the Visual Resources Review Board for the town of Farragut for July 2018. I want to start the meeting off very quickly by first welcoming our newest member to the board, Mr. David Freeman. Thank you very much for joining us, and I guess his term starts this month, and we're glad to have you. And the second introduction is we have a student member of the board now. This is something that's new to the town of Farragut, and this is the first time we've had a student on this particular board, although there are some on others. And so I'd like to welcome Alex to the board, and he's a student at Farragut High School. And he will be able to participate in all the activities of the board, make comments just as everyone else, but student members are not voting members of the board. So welcome to both of you as the first time on our board for the Visual Resources Review Board. The second thing for tonight is that we were at a point where we need to add officer elections to our agenda. It is not on the current agenda, so it would be an addition to what we do tonight. So in order to make the modification, we do need to have an approval of this amendment to the agenda. So at this point, we need to have a motion and a second for an approval of the amendment of the agenda. So do we have a motion for that approval?
Motion to amend the agenda to add the elections to it.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second for that?
I'll second.
All right. Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. So the first item that we'll do, we'll make officer election item 1A. The first item is item 1, which is the approval of the minutes for the June 26, 2018 meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes as presented from the June meeting? Okay. If there's no discussion, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from June 2018?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so item 1A now will be the officer elections. We have 3 positions, which is the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. So we'll need to have a nomination for each of those in order. So starting with the chair, do we have a nomination for chair for this upcoming year?
I nominate Marty Lehman, please.
We have a nomination of well, myself. Is there a second to that nomination? All right, do we have a second to that nomination?
I second it.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, so we need a nomination at this point for the vice chair. We have a nomination for that, or anyone who wants to do that.
I'll nominate Brittany Moore for vice chair.
Okay. Brittany's been nominated. Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And last, we need a secretary. Do we have a nomination?
I nominate Miss Jenny Stowe for that.
Okay, we have a nomination for Jeannie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. So our board officers are set for the upcoming year. All right, so that brings us down to the ground-mounted sign applications. The first one on the agenda is core change on Parkside Drive. It's a tenant panel replacement.
This is a tenant panel over in the Potbelly Shopping Center, which Potbelly unfortunately is not there anymore, which I'm very bummed about. But and this is one that I'd actually emailed you all a few weeks ago, so they could go ahead and do the installation, but then it would have to be formally acted on at this time. So the tenant panel is what is there on the screen that they're requesting, and the staff recommends approval of this panel. It is very legible in our staff's opinion, and Blends in pretty well with the rest of the sign, I think. So staff recommends approval.
I have a question on, you
Yeah.
were talking about the landscaping, which there's not any. So
Yeah,
is
that was something that would, yeah, and that was noted as
Right.
part of our review. That wouldn't be a subject to, is that they would need to,
Is that, it's not their responsibility, it's the person who owns this, so is
Right.
that your, like, do they get in charge? or-
ultimately, it's, we just need to reach out to the
Right.
whole Rob, I guess, in this case, that manages the,
That kind of surprised me when I saw that,
well, they had it there at one time,
then it
I
just
don't
kind
know.
of went away.
Yeah, that's a, really a kind of a chronic problem. That,
This is a very low sign. It'd have to be something fairly low for
Yeah.
now, they
readability.
would have to put
I don't
the
remember what was in
landscaping to
there.
the sides, which does count.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could do that.
Something, because it looks like mulch there, doesn't it?
It's about the only thing you could put in the front is
Well, there was
just
something there at one time.
pansies or something really short, maybe some seasonal flowers that would be real short.
So this will be a subject too.
Yeah, that would be a subject too, actually.
But the sign itself is I mean, that's fine. It's just.
Yeah. Just the landscaping around the
Okay.
sign,
So
yeah.
It's like it's almost like two different issues.
Yeah, I think the sign looks good,
great.
very readable.
Very nice.
Okay, is there any further discussion on the core change tenant panel sign? Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve, subject to the landscaping in the front.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Have to be
Aye. Opposed?
minimal.
All right, so the next one is the, well, it's becoming a Quality Inn on Campbell Lakes Drive. Had been America's Best Value Inn. Just changing out the panel on the pole sign.
This is the second or third time.
Yeah, this is the same size. In the sign ordinance, there is an allowance for interstate interchange pole signs for gas, food, and lodging establishments, and they're just simply replacing the existing sign face with the new hotel name, and the staff recommends approval of the request.
All right, looks like it would be easy to read.
Yeah.
Very legible.
Easy.
All right. Any further discussion on this sign request? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so moving down to the landscape plan applications. We have one for Knoxville Farragut Storage, Snyder Road, where U.S. Golf was formerly.
This is a redevelopment of the U.S. Golf site, and they're basically going to demolish, obviously, the building and most of the site. The detention basin near Campbell Station Road and Snyder will be retained. They're obviously going to make it look a lot better, but they will be using that, part of that. They'll also be building a walking trail along North Campbell Station Road, which is a pretty substantial undertaking, quite a distance there, and that'll be a nice addition to our walking trail network. And so the plan before you is just the landscaping related to the project. They're keeping landscaping around the detention basin. They're just going to, clean it up basically, and then they're adding trees around the rest of the project. And well, they're actually adding trees around the detention basin, supplementing it. They are keeping what they can, but they are supplementing that, and then adding a pretty substantial amount of landscaping around the periphery of the parking lot, and then along the walking trail that would be going on North Campbell Station Road. The site plan was approved by the Planning Commission last week with some subject twos. And the remaining comments that the staff had on this landscape plan were the 4 that were included in the packet, and none of which would be difficult to address. So the staff would recommend approval of the landscape plan subject to the items 1 through 4 being satisfactorily addressed and revised plans being submitted.
Okay, so the subject to number 1 is asking for this board to approve the substitution of the trees.
Yeah, what it actually is they're going above and beyond what is required. You can substitute up to 20% of the shade trees with understory trees, and we provided that language in the landscaping ordinance many years ago to try to give people some flexibility, because there's some places in a parking lot where a large shade tree would just not work. It's just too big. So this allows them to count some understory trees toward that overall shade tree count, and use those, in their parking lot so that they can still function in that capacity. So it's
They're
really
removing all of their oaks and elms and from what, to do, correct? I mean, that all of their oaks and
they're
elms
still meeting the shade tree count.
are.
Yeah. They're just they're actually adding more overall trees to the plan.
Are they gonna cut down all the trees that are there now, then?
No, they're removing.
They're going to
just-
try to salvage what they can.
Huge amount of trees there.
Yeah, they've just got to clean it up a lot. With a lot of that stuff is stuff that wasn't even planted that's come up, like Bradford pears. They're fairly invasive.
So did they take into consideration the power lines that are there? Because I see, we plant trees under power lines. And
Yeah.
then 5 years later, we're up
There's
cutting
some
them back.
Yeah, that's a good point. They do take that into consideration. Well, this walking trail placement, actually, the trail is about 15 to 20, almost 18 feet off of the edge of Campbell Station Road, so it's pretty far away from the road. Because if you've been out to the site, the property drops off pretty substantially right off the edge of Campbell Station Road, so it's easier actually to work a trail through the woods, further away from the road. They may not actually need a lot of these trees. It's pretty heavily tree covered through there, and the staff will have to work with the applicant on the placement of the trail, and if they can work it in there, and we're obviously going to try to make sure that they preserve as much tree cover as they can while they're putting the trail in. So a lot of those trees may not even be necessary. We have a note on the site plan that the trail location is to be coordinated with the town staff, and that, it can be manipulated in its alignment so that we could save certain trees as we try to work it through. Because we don't want to go out there and just clear cut that area, of course. We want to make sure that, we can kind of snake it through there and minimize the amount of tree removal.
Okay.
I know that we have on the entrance exit, the visibility triangles there, but
Yeah.
and it is difficult for me to tell what we're planting there along the drive. Can you say what that is, or blow up something so we can see it?
The trees that are near the entrance would be,
Is it gonna, because even with the visibility triangle on some vehicles, it's kind of hard to,
it's pretty far
see
back
that.
though, actually. They're moving the access point further to the west,
okay.
which is actually a good thing. Gets it further from Camel Station Road. Let's see what that is here.
Just what I printed out, I can't
Yeah.
read the schedule
It's a
on
little
here. It's
bit.
too small.
Bay Magnolia is down in part of that area, so those are relatively small. They're kind of leggy though, so, but they are far enough back that they shouldn't be an issue there, because they're not going to be that large of a tree.
Okay.
Typically, they'll not exceed 20 feet in height. So it's not like a tulip poplar or a sycamore or something that's going to spread out pretty wide. That should be okay in that location. And that's the trees that are closest to Snyder Road.
Okay. But those trees do fill out pretty good
Yeah.
during the
Pretty well.
summertime.
Yeah, it's a native magnolia. It's not like the southern magnolia. It's much smaller, not anywhere close to that, and not nearly as messy as the southern magnolia.
Okay.
So how big are the large circles around the retention pond?
Those generally they're supposed to be at a scale that anticipates the canopy of the tree at maturity. So, they should be about 20 to 25 feet in width for the larger trees. That looks like it might be slightly less than that, but it's pretty close to that. Before we required that, if y'all remember the real old landscape plans, it was just dots, and it really didn't reflect what it was going to look like years later. So that's why we started requiring it to express a canopy that should be fairly reflective of what the tree will look like 20 years from now. Trees are just not going to grow as fast as in a site like this as they will in the woods or in an area that is a little bit more favorable conditions. A parking lot is a really harsh environment for trees. They're just simply not going to grow as fast as they would in your yard, for example.
Did you say there's a current retention pond on the side already?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's there at the corner where
Okay.
that ring of
Any
trees
trees
is.
Right, yeah.
It has a lot of trees, so again, we're just going to have to kind of assess that to see what can be salvaged, what's nice trees, and certainly not get rid of those. They are going to have to do a little bit of grading in the basin, so that will affect some of the existing trees because they're
The
going to
question
have
I have
to.
is, all these trees, do they have ways of providing water? When you plant a new tree, you've got to,
Most commercial sites irrigate, but so it's not a requirement of the town. And you can see sites that don't irrigate, like Dollar General, and it's just not going to look as good. But most non-residential developments in the town and apartment developments, they'll irrigate. I'm not sure if this particular development will be doing that or not, but I would guess they will. It's a pretty high-end mini storage development.
okay.
Have they given you any indication of where a sign might be placed on the property, or have they discussed that at all?
No, I have not discussed that with them. That would obviously have to come before you all.
Well, again, just thinking in terms of, especially at the entrance to the property, depending on where a sign's placed, that could impact visibility, but
Yeah.
they don't seem to have left a whole lot of room in there with the potential trees and things that they're planting. So I was just curious if they were thinking there or down here at the end.
They may want to put it down near where the walking trail comes into Snyder. It's closer to
Campbell Station.
Campbell Station.
Well, there's room
I
there for it.
guess. Yeah. Yeah. That's where I would put it if I were them.
Mark, is this also affiliated with the storage just past there? Or is it
No,
separate?
it's not. It's
Okay.
separate.
All right.
It should be a different look.
Okay.
So, we actually have removed many warehouses from this zoning district for no future many
That-
warehouses would be allowed in
That's what, I
C2.
didn't realize it. I thought that.
This
they were-
property was excluded
Was,
because
that's what I
they had come before the planning commission before the ordinance was created to
Okay.
remove them.
Because in the past, we haven't, and that's
Yeah.
when I
Well,
read
that's in
that.
C1. You're
So-
thinking, this is actually zone C2, regional
And- and
commercial.
the
It's
C2,
always
but
been
after
allowed.
this, you're not going to anymore.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I-
not in C2, yeah.
Gotcha. And never see one.
Yeah, it hasn't been in C1 for years,
Yeah.
but we just recently removed it from C2. Yeah.
Okay. Because when I saw that, I was like,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that, but
The big building, the big rectangular building is going to be, or squarish looking building is a 3-story building. And the
Oh,
other-
is it?
The other 2 buildings are 1-story buildings to the sides. So it's a pretty good sized development. I think I forgot how many square feet the total development was, but it's pretty large.
Okay.
Anything would be an improvement over the current,
Yeah, it'll actually
Nobody
be an
step on anybody's
improvement,
toes.
yes.
yeah.
It will be an improvement, and we'll be getting a nice walking trail section that is
that
pretty substantial.
Definitely needed.
Yeah, it's quite a distance of a walking trail.
Yeah, it looks like it.
What is the projection, like their hope to finish this?
I have no idea.
Like the end of this year, first of next year? Really?
My guess is they'll probably want to get started with the grading maybe late summer, maybe early September or
So they
sometime.
still could actually have it.
I don't know how long it takes to build these type of, they've got a fair amount of grading. I mean, they're, to do this.
It's 84,600 square feet.
Is that the total that's all 3 buildings? Yeah, so that's quite a bit of square footage.
Thank you.
All metal frame construction, so it should be, pretty.
Fairly
Adaptable to-
fast once they get started.
So you said it's going to be 3 floors high.
The first one
Part
is,
of it,
Yeah,
the other
the
Big
two.
box.
it's
So
3
it's
story.
3 floors high. It's not just 30 feet high. It's gonna
It's
have 3
it's
floors.
about 40 feet tall total. That's the height of it. Of the biggest building. The other 2 are just 1-level buildings, and they're not conditioned. The big one is conditioned self-storage.
Okay.
Oh, the other two are not.
They're not. Yeah, right.
Okay.
Main building's 70,200. On 3 levels? Okay. It's not a high rise, it's 3 levels, okay.
Is there a plan,
40 feet tall total from ground to
do
top.
anything with that red light? And the
That is
traffic
not my
that's-
department.
Curious.
There is some plans to do some things with Snyder Road and, the
Yeah,
westbound
It is.
turning movements
Getting to
from,
be a
Well, I know
problem.
that property is kind of a turnaround.
It is.
yeah, I think we're looking at another lane isn't
I
that
think
right?
we definitely need
Southbound.
another lane.
Southbound,
But that's not our
if you're
problem
going
right now.
west on Outlet, Snyder, whatever you want to call it, and then there's going to be another southbound lane to go under toward the interstate.
Under with
'Cause
regular
that's apparently a
traffic out,
really
like in the
big
apartments, just
backup
kind of
at certain
regular.
times of the
been
year,
going
a
out.
day.
Have you been there once it's been, like
No,
2 or
I've
3
avoided.
times it's gone out?
All right, is there any more discussion on the mini storage property? So it sounds like we need to really do two things. We need to approve the substitution of the understory trees, and then we also need to approve the entire landscaping plan with the subject twos.
So
Does that sound right to do it as two separate
You could do it
things? or
that
can we-
way, or if you just
Add
wanted to
subject
approve the
twos.
landscape plan, I mean, it's part of the landscape plan. So
Okay,
that'd
so
be simpler.
just
It's
approve
fine
the
with
one
me.
thing then with
Yeah.
the,
It's not really a variance that they're asking for, it's just
okay.
a modification.
So it could be approved with the subject twos as written?
Yeah, that's fine,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, well, if there's no further discussion, then I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve this landscape plan with the four subject twos as we've listed them here.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, well, that's the last item on the agenda, unless there's something else we need to discuss, Mark.
Think I have anything. As soon as I get another planner in here, we are going to proceed with the Tree City, though. We have not forgotten about that.
Okay.
That's a big priority. I think we want to try to achieve in the next fiscal year, hopefully.
Yeah, we kind of got started on that, and then it sort of stalled.
Yeah, my buddy Zach went up to Wyoming, so I can't blame him. But
I'm lost.
the planner that
The planner that presented the Tree City to us.
He's, oh.
been a while
I thought
back
it said
now.
Planter. The
Planner.
planner.
Planner,
I'm
yeah.
like,
Transportation,
what are we talking about?
he went up to Wyoming.
been in trucking all my.
All right.
And logistics and.
He was really good.
Well, if
Yeah.
there's nothing else, we'll end the meeting for this month.
And then selling it.
Well,
Thank you very
and we
much.
got a lot of compliments.